Let me take a moment and talk about Riverside.fm. It allows you to record studio quality audio and up to 4K video. When you need to record audio and video, Riverside.fm can do it. So if you're looking for a hero platform for all your recording needs, from podcasts to webinars to any video content, Riverside.fm. I've got a promo code for you where you'll receive a 30% discount on the first 3 months of your subscription. I'll give it to you twice. The promo code is SHIPIT. All one word, SHIPIT, and you'll pick up a 30% discount on your first 3 months of your subscription. Riverside.fm.
In this edition of the Football History Headlines, we take a quick look at football in the last 6 seasons of the 19th century, from 1895 to the year 1900. Football History Rewind, where we take a look at year-by-year approach of football history and American football, is coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with PigskinDispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com, your portal to positive football history, and welcome to the Football History Rewind, where we go through football history 1 year at a time. And we are all the way up at the end of the 19th century. And we covered some bases the late 1890s, but I wanted to sort of put a capper on that and tell you a little bit about what was happening and transpiring, and especially in the collegiate and the professional levels of football. Now, we know that 1892 was the first paid player. We talked about that. The Allegheny Athletic Association paying Pudge Heffelfinger, among others, to play in a game against the Pittsburgh club. And we want to make sure that we cover what happened in 1895, too. The newly crowned champions of the latter half of the decade, as well as the professional teams that had some outstanding events happen. So 1895, the previous part of the decade saw Yale, Princeton, and even Harvard battling for the nation's top spot on the gridiron hierarchy. And it all changed in 1895 as the University of Pennsylvania's football 11 rose to new heights. Yes, the Penn Quakers, under head coach George Woodruff, finished with an unmatched record in 1895 of 14 wins and 0 losses, and was retroactively named the national champion by the Holgate System, National Championship Foundation, Helms Athletic Foundation, and the Billingsley Report, and was a co-national champion according to Parkage Davis. The Quakers outscored their opposition by the tune of 480 points for and only 24 against. Their closest game happened in the second-to-last contest of the season against Harvard, when Penn escaped with a 17-14 victory over the Crimson. Now, Parkage Davis said they were a co-champion, and he was the sole selector of Yale as a co-champion with Penn. The Bulldogs had an unblemished record of 13 wins, 0 losses, and 2 ties, with the ties happening against the Boston Athletic Club and Brown University. Now, Casper Whitney and Walter Camp once again selected an All-America team, and 10 of the 11 players played for either Harvard, Princeton, or Yale. The lone exception was Cornell's fine quarterback, Clint Wyckoff. Now, let's not forget about John Brailier playing some professional football in 1895. For 80 years, he was thought to be the very first paid player when he got $10 for leaving his college game and going and playing some pro football around Pittsburgh. But we have some great stories on John Brailier and some of our scandals and scoundrels in some early football. So let's move on to 1896. Another newcomer to the top spot in collegiate football occurred in 1896. In week 2 of the season, the Princeton Tigers tied Lafayette and ended up being an omen for the season's finish, as these two teams shared the national championship according to the National Championship Foundation and Parkage Davis. Holgate, Billingsley, and the Helms Athletic Foundation found favor in calling out Princeton as the sole winner. And I think Davis and the NCF got it right, as these two teams, when they tied, they faced each other and crushed all of their opponents they played, ending up with an identical 11-0-1 record. So I think a co-championship was duly in order. In the professional football scene, the Pro Football Hall of Fame tells us that the first team of all paid players took the field for the Allegheny Athletic Association near Pittsburgh for a 2-game abbreviated season. The club decided not to field a team in 1895 after an investigation by the Amateur Athletic Union, or AAU, was launched after accusations that swirled that the AAA players were being paid. Fearing that having a pro status would discourage any opponents from playing them, they sat out a year and then dipped their toes into pro water in 1896 after they knew that the AAU was suspending them from amateur competition. Knowing full well what was coming, the AAA emptied the treasury of the club to buy players' contracts such as Pudge Heffelfinger and others to get a couple of games in. On consecutive days, the Allegheny Athletic Association defeated the Pittsburgh Athletic Club and Duquesne Country and Athletic Club, both by means of shutouts. Then these 2 games, after they were done, the pro football turmoil and the AAU suspension had upset the club so much that the sport was dropped altogether by the membership. So we move on to 1897. Once again, we had co-champions. They were selected years later by experts, choosing Yale and Penn to the top spot. Yale, with its 9-0-2 mark, was picked by only one entity, Mr. Park H. Davis, as national champion. I think he was a little bit of a homer towards Yale. Their ties were against Army and Harvard. And all selectors, the other selectors, took a more obvious choice, the Penn Quakers, who were a perfect 15-0 for their record. I have to stand with the Helms and National Championship Society and some of the other ones that Penn Quakers 15-0 versus a 9-0-2 Yale, only picked by Park H. Davis. I'm not sure that that's quite true, so I would have to lean towards the Penn Quakers probably being the national champions in 1897. On the pro circuit, well, the Latrobe Athletic Association fielded an all-professional team, and unlike the Allegheny Athletic Association a year prior we just talked about, they were the first pro team to complete a full season. Remember, the AAA only played 2 games in 1896. 1897, Latrobe's Athletic Association played a full schedule, all-pro players, first team to compete for a full season with the professional level. 1898, the decision was not clear-cut and unanimous for the next season for the Collegiate National Championship. Co-champions Princeton and Harvard had to share the honor. Harvard had a perfect 11-0-0 record, defeating their nemesis Yale 17-0 in the season finale, and they didn't face Princeton that year. The Tigers, they sported an 11-0-1 record, with their tie coming against Army in a 5-all stalemate late in the season. Drexel was also a perfect at 7-0, along with many teams that were 2-0 and 3-0 across the country. You say, why would teams only play 2 games or 3 games? Well, football was just starting up a lot of around the country. It was just starting to spread in the southern and western states, so they couldn't get a lot of games in. They didn't have a lot of interest in the players. They're just trying to get something developed, and some of them even played in the spring instead of the fall. It wasn't truly a fall sport like it is now. So that's some interesting things. So they only got 2 games in because of the competition they could find. Also in 1898, on December 3rd, the Latrobe Athletic Association's manager, Dave Barry, recruited some of the best players from teams local to the Pittsburgh area in order to play a team of some of the nation's best players assembled by the Duquesne Country and Athletic Club. Well, this was the first recorded playing of 2 professional all-star teams in pro football. Duquesne won that contest 16-0 at Exposition Park in Allegheny City, which is now the north side of the city of Pittsburgh. We move on to 1899. A repeat in the next year, as the official NCAA Division I football records recorded at Harvard and Princeton as being selected, sharing the national championship title. Sewanee had a great season to note, going undefeated with only 13 players on the roster, but outscoring their opponents 322-10 with a 12-0 record in the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Association. The University of Chicago under Amos Alonzo Stagg also had a strong showing that year, posting a 16-0-2 record. The Maroons' ties were against tough Iowa and Penn teams, but 4 of the wins were against local high school competition. Also that year in Chicago, Chris O'Brien formed as a neighborhood football team called the Morgan Athletic Club. Joe Ziemba has talked about this on his podcast. He's come on and talked to us about it too. The Morgan Athletic Club would eventually morph into the Cardinals franchise in the NFL, which still plays to this day as the Arizona Cardinals. It's the oldest running franchise with the same name, the Cardinals, and they started in 1899 with Chris O'Brien. We move on to 1900. William C. Temple became the first individual to own a pro football club when he took over the payments of the Duquesne Country and Athletic Club team. That's what happened in the pro level. At the college level, John Heisman, you know that name, the Heisman Trophy, he coached Clemson to a 6-0 record and was probably the top team in the South in college football that year. But the South football wasn't as strong as the Northeast was at that time. Yale doubled the amount of the Tigers' victories, with being 12-0, and had played a little bit better competition and more established region in the game of football in the year 1900. Also in college football, Iowa and Indiana joined the Western Conference, which was the precursor to the modern Big Ten Conference. As a matter of fact, with those two joining, it took them up to 9 teams, and those two additions gave the Western Conference the nickname by many of being called the Big Nine, and eventually that led to the name change of Big Nine Conference, which again morphed into the Big Ten Conference, even though they have like 12 or 14 teams now. Who can keep track of that? But they're still the Big Ten to us now. So hopefully that gets you caught up at the end of the 19th century in both pro football and college football. When we come back, we'll go into the beginning of the 20th century in football history. Our next edition of the Football History Rewind will come in between Christmas and New Year's, and we look forward to talking to you about that because there's some great things that happened in the 20th century, as you well know. So till tomorrow, everybody, have a great Gridiron Day.
Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Jean Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandom at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.